And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Experience Hockey Talk. Serious hockey talk for serious hockey fans. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Michael Lindenbaum, and today is Saturday, December 16th, but you would know that because you're on a computer right now watching this on Facebook Live, and normally they have the date on the laptop or phone or whatever device you're watching this on today. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, I am joined from our good friends at Nova Caps, George Foussekis. George, welcome. You get to do an hour. You're not doing a 15-minute segment. You're just doing an hour.
Yeah, this should be fun. I'm looking forward to looking. I'm up for the challenge here.
You're up to the challenge.
Yes.
You're up to the task. Oh man, good luck. But so real quick, man, actually, you know what? I screwed up. I meant to say, what the foos? You're doing an hour. Oh, well. This is what happens when you don't have Bernie anymore. We miss you, Bernie. But, serious talk, Caps had 3 games this past week. Monday, they played the New York Islanders. Tuesday, they played the Colorado Avalanche. And Thursday, they played the Boston Bruins. Obviously, the game against the Islanders was not an ideal game for the Capitals. They kind of laid an egg, per se, even though they got 1 goal on the board. However, the rebound the very next night against Colorado was a very good one for the Washington Capitals. George, why don't you take that game away real quick against the Colorado Avalanche?
Well, the Capitals, definitely wanted to have a better response than they did against the Islanders when they just absolutely, kind of laid an egg in that game. But the Capitals just came out against the Avalanche. They had a little bit of a slow start once again, but Jacob Vrana used his excellent wheels, got to the net. He got a beautiful pass from Evgeny Kuznetsov, and that put the Caps up early into the game. And unfortunately, the Capitals kind of had a little bit of a slow start in the second period too, and then the Avalanche were able to tie it up. The Capitals just kind of had they had some poor defensive zone coverage on that play, and then later in the period, the Capitals got some pressure in the Avalanche end, and John Carlson put the puck in the net there, and the Capitals just kind of took the momentum from that, and it carried them into the third period, and they were able to get some big-time goals against the Avalanche, and they pretty much had the game well in hand, especially late in the game, and the Caps got a lot of production from their top players. Holtby was outstanding in the game. Kuznetsov had 3 assists, and pretty much led to a well-rounded Capitals victory against the Avalanche, 5-2 that night.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It was definitely a good game. The Caps needed it. And then in their next game, they actually took on the Boston Bruins, who at that time, they were on a 10-game winning streak against Boston. They made it 11 with their victory over them, which was a 5-3 win. But this one was not easy. This one was a very difficult one that saw a lot of penalties called in this game.
Yeah, you're right, Michael. It was not an easy game, but the Capitals just seemed to have the Bruins' number over the last number of years, and the good thing is, the penalties that were called really didn't hurt the Caps that much. It went kind of both ways in this game with the penalty calls, but, the Capitals were able to pounce on the Bruins early, and Vrana got his second goal in his second straight game, and the Capitals really kind of just beat the Bruins up, if you want to put it that way. They pretty much hit them and frustrated them, and the shorthanded goal by Chiasson in the third period really was a backbreaker for the Bruins. The Caps really took the physical play to the Bruins, and they just absolutely hit them all over the ice. And you even saw it with Brad Marchand towards the end of the game. He was getting frustrated. He was cross-checking Dmitry Orlov in the back, and of course, that led to a big scrum with Tom Wilson.
Well, Brad Marchand's going to do Brad Marchand things.
Yes. Yeah.
so we expected that.
That's kind of accurate, yeah. He's what I like to call a little bit of a rat on the ice, and he
looks like one.
Yeah, he kind of resembles one. He's got the same whiskers and everything. So, but the Caps really honestly they played a really solid road game, and of course Braden Holtby was outstanding again for the Caps, and he's been their MVP as far as I'm concerned, and the Caps really played a great road game in Boston that night.
Yeah, and then you mentioned Alex Chason. He had the two third period goals to really extend it for the Washington Capitals. Obviously, he is a player of scrutiny, I guess you can say. He's somebody that a lot of people don't understand why he was signed. Why wasn't like a kid like Riley Barber brought up instead? What are your thoughts about Alex Chason in this? I guess the first quarter, and then what he's been able to do since the first quarter of the season.
I think he's been a pretty solid ad for the Capitals. He's your typical fourth line player, can play with size. He's a pretty strong guy. Not the fastest guy on the ice, but he is able to help out on the penalty kill, obviously, and he can, if he gets loose on the puck, he can obviously make a good move to the net, and he can crash the net area and get those dirty goals as you've seen the past couple of games. So I think he's a solid ad for the Capitals and on their fourth line, but I may not want to play him every night. Depending on who the opponent is, he might be more of a situational player. If you play against maybe a bigger team or a physical team, he might be the option to use in those games versus if you play a speedy team that has a lot of speed and skill, you may not want to put him on the ice as much in those particular games.
All right, and then of course another player that the Capitals signed during the offseason is Devontae Smith-Pelly. How would you grade his performance so far with the Washington Capitals? And also an interesting note, we're 11 weeks into the season now. So, there's 33 weeks in a season. We're a third of the way through now.
I feel pretty much the same way as I do with Chason and Smith-Pelly. I think Smith-Pelly has a little bit better skill set and probably a little bit quicker on the ice. He's kind of a spark plug player, if you know what I mean. He plays every shift hard. He brings a lot of energy. One of those guys. He's just one of those guys you love to have around because he can change the game. He can make a hit. He can throw his weight around. He can score those dirty goals. He's definitely a good player that you want to have around, especially if you make a deep run into the postseason like the Capitals plan to do.
Yeah, and and because this is our first time talking in a while, I want to take our time, really breaking down some players. We already talked about the games. We talked about Chason, we talked about Smith-Pelly. We got to talk about the defense, Christian Djoos and Madison Bowey. How do you think those two have fared? And do you think that maybe they should be put with John Carlson and Brooks Orpik instead of having Brooks Orpik with John Carlson?
I think Christian Djoos and Madison Bowey have performed very well, although I think the Capitals coaching staff has been very mindful of their minutes and position and where they are in specific situations on the ice. With Brooks Orpik's possible injury now, you could see, especially Christian Djoos, play a little bit more with John Carlson, and those two are both excellent skaters, so they should be able to find some instant chemistry together. Madison Bowey, on the other hand, he'll probably remain on the Capitals' third pairing, and he'll probably get his normal 13 minutes a night. I think the Caps have plenty of options still, even if they do have an injury to Orpik. They obviously still have Taylor Chorney available to them if the injuries do pop up. So I feel that the Capitals' young players are good with where they are right now, and I don't think the coaching staff is necessarily in any kind of rush to get those, to force them into situations that they may not be comfortable with. I think the Capitals honestly really have a good thing going with their defense right now, and I don't think there's any need to change anything. And I think those young players have performed really well with what they've been given so far.
All right. And then just to note, Tariq El-Bashir did note that Brooks Orpik was on the ice today doing line rushes with John Carlson, but it sounds like he may be a game time decision for tonight's game against the Anaheim Ducks. I almost said Anaheim Mighty Ducks. Kick it old school there. But he does sound like a game time decision for tonight. And then, of course, this is like one of my favorite talking points all season long, and that's Tom Wilson. You know, I said it during the playoffs when he scored the 3 goals against Toronto that was a confidence builder for him, and that was something that he needed. That has proven very true. And then during the offseason, Barry Trotz said that he wants to see Tom Wilson score double digits in goals. Get, more than what he's gotten in goals and assists and points, which he's on pace to break all 3 of those right now. Now he's playing on the top line with Nicholas Backstrom and Alex Ovechkin after starting off really on the bottom 6. What have you seen from Tom Wilson since his move to the top line? And have you seen that confidence grow the way I've been seeing it grow?
Well, with the confidence thing, absolutely. I mean, Tom Wilson's really taken his game to the next level. But the most important thing for him, too, is now you're seeing him with more skilled players on the ice, which is probably better for him. He's probably not the most skilled guy, but he's a very powerful guy, and he can get to the pucks, and he can get to the pucks around the net, which is something I've also noticed with his game. He's done a lot better. He's getting to the net. He's driving hard to the net. He's making plays. He's able to, make plays around other teams' defensemen. He's getting to those loose pucks in front of the net. And when you have skilled players like Alex Ovechkin and Nicholas Backstrom, those pucks are going to be flying to the net at all times. So I feel that Tom Wilson is really taking his game to the next level, and I do anticipate if he keeps up his good play, he will break all those personal records in no time this year.
And just the note, the most goals he scored in the season is 7. And I don't have his most assists in front of me, but it's something like 12 or something like that. And the most points he's had is, actually that might be screwed because I think the most points he's had is 16. So my math is definitely off on that one right there. But he's got 5 goals, 10 assists already for 15 points. He just needs 1 point to tie his best for points, 2 to break it. So he's already on that pace right now. And now, when we still had Bernie, we would say it all the time. You want Tom Wilson to get these top minutes. And remember, in juniors, Tom Wilson was like a 40-goal guy, like a 30, 40-goal guy in juniors. So the guy has skill and the guy has the talent. It's just that happens that he's also a freight train at the same time when he does things. And, and I think that was part of the problem in the very beginning was that he wasn't taught how to control that side of his game, how to control the physicality of his game. And he, now he's learning that under Trotz in the last 4 years that he's been with him. And he's being rewarded for it. But I think he, like you were saying, he brings an element, but also keep in mind, Alex Ovechkin's a guy who can hit as well and create space as well. And I think that's a beautiful, wonderful thing for Tom Wilson is that he doesn't have to be the guy hitting everybody because you got a guy like Alex Ovechkin who will do the same. And now you have a true guy who can post up in front of the net too.
Michael, let me add one thing you're talking about, Tom Wilson being a freight train and all. I mean, obviously, when you have Alex Ovechkin on the other side, too, it's a psychological game, too, especially if you're a defenseman for the opposing team, because you have Wilson coming at you from one side, then you have Alex Ovechkin coming at you from the other side. One way or another, you're going to take a hit or you're going to get hit, and psychologically, that can really play with somebody's mind, knowing that the fact that especially if a player does not embrace getting hit that well, and they know that they're going to be hit by 2 very powerful guys, for 60 minutes, it can really mess with a player's head at times, if they know that it's going to be a long night on the ice, especially if you're getting hit every shift after, every shift, it can really mess with players in their heads.
Oh yeah, definitely. And actually, one of the great things is that, and I remember this, is that you know the saying that hockey players give 110%. That's because it's 90% mental and 20% physical. And that's exactly the biggest point why. It's like that psychological breakdown of going, man, this line's going to really grind me down for an entire game. Will I be able to hold up against these guys? So you definitely nailed it on the head with the psychology part, of the game. And that's something that a lot of people probably don't understand either, who maybe are new to hockey or, still trying to learn the game in an essence. See? Serious hockey talk for serious hockey fans. See how that works? But real quick, we're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we have a lot of NHL news and notes to go over. There's been a lot of injuries this past week in the NHL, and it's been crazy. So we'll be right back after this quick commercial break. Looking for sci-fi fun? Then come to the Hunt Valley Inn in Hunt Valley, Maryland for Farpoint from February 9th to 11th in 2018. Come see special guests like Matt Frewer, Timothy Zahn, Nana Visitor, and many more. For more information and to purchase tickets, visit farpointcon.com today. Attention hockey fans, the Experience Hockey Talk is on Patreon. Come join the exclusive Txht community today for access to exclusive episodes, interviews, and so much more. You can join the Txht Patreon community at patreon.com/TXHT_hockey. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Experience Hockey Talk, serious hockey talk for serious hockey fans. Mike here, and I'm being joined by George Foussekis from Manova Caps, our good friends. Which, by the way, George, I was really disappointed that you were not at the Caps Maple Leafs viewing party. You were one of the people that I really wanted to hang out with at that game.
Yes, yeah, I heard it was a fun night though. I heard everyone had a really great time, and I heard it was an awesome event. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't make it that night, unfortunately.
It's okay. You're just kind of just like, yeah, I couldn't make it, yeah.
I'm sorry.
But, going into this past week, we had a lot of injuries in the NHL. It started off on December 10th when it was announced that Jaden Schwartz was going to miss at least 6 weeks for the St. Louis Blues. But then it got compounded 2 days later when they also then placed their top defenseman and captain Alex Pietrangelo on injury reserve as well. Obviously, I saw the shot that Jaden Schwartz blocked, and the way it hit him, it looked like it hit him in the tongue of the skate, which there's no protection there on the skate. How big of a blow is it to lose, one of their top forwards and their top defenseman at the same time?
It's a huge blow to the Blues. Obviously, Schwartz was having a great year and was actually up there in the NHL scoring race up until that point, and he was over a point per game player. So obviously, you lose a point per game forward. Obviously, it's a big big bloated lineup, and with Petrolangelo, obviously, he's their captain and obviously a leader of that team, and he logs so many minutes for them, probably 25, 30 minutes a night, and he plays in all situations for them, power play, penalty kill. He's really a key defenseman, but the good thing for the Blues is that they have a deep defense core, so they should be able to slot guys right in, and they should be able to overcome, losing probably arguably their best defenseman in St. Louis. So 2 big blows for the Blues, but they should be able to overcome it, and I still think they're going to remain a competitive team here down the stretch.
Yeah, and then one team that has remained competitive but has really started off the season really injured. They get Ryan Getzlaf back, but the Anaheim Ducks lose Corey Perry, who's now out week to week for the Anaheim Ducks. Obviously, it's great to see that they get their captain back in Ryan Getzlaf, who had been out, was supposed to be out for 2 full months with a facial fracture, but get one back, lose another. How much longer do you think Anaheim can hold out before, the wheels start falling off with all these injuries? Because they still haven't had Ryan Kessler play for them yet this season.
Yeah, the Ducks, this season for them has just been a whirlwind with injuries. Unfortunately, they're the team injury of the NHL this year, because they've been handicapped from the start of their season, and it's in a very competitive Pacific Division. It's very hard to overcome, especially if you're, basically 2 months behind everybody as far as health. And, obviously losing Getzlaf and Perry at the same time, that's their top 2 centers up the ice. So most teams, they lose their top 2 centers. It's really hard for them to overcome those holes in their lineup over a long period of time. Fortunately for them, though, they have a pretty good defense core still. They got a young team. They have a lot of good pieces in place, but unfortunately for them, the injuries have just been absolutely brutal for them this year. And it looked like Corey Perry too was having kind of a rebound year this year. So it's kind of a mess in Anaheim right now, and unfortunately for them, it's not looking good for them.
And then you had the Minnesota Wild goalie become week to week with a lower body injury. Obviously a big blow for Minnesota, losing their number 1 goaltender week to week. I'm not 100% familiar with who their other goaltenders are, but Devin Dubnyk, since coming to Minnesota, has really turned that franchise around. This is obviously something that they hope, when they say week to week, is maybe 1 to 2 weeks at the most, maybe not 3 or more, which could be the worst fear for them. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, as Devin Dubnyk goes, the Minnesota Wild go, and that's kind of been their thing over the last couple years. I mean, he's really come to Minnesota, been an outstanding addition for them, and obviously he's had couple good years under his belt the last few years, and it's a huge loss for their team. Obviously now, I believe Alex Stalock will be taking over the net for the immediate future. He's another goalie who's kind of bounced around a little bit, but he's a serviceable guy, and he has shown the ability to steal some of those games too. So if he comes in and can give Dubnyk-like performances over the next couple weeks, the Wild should still be able to hang around. But obviously, when you lose your starting goaltender for any lengthy period of time, it can really hurt you in the standings.
Yeah. And speaking about goaltenders being injured, the Vegas Golden Knights, they've been getting healthier lately. They had Malcolm Subban back for a while now, and now they have Marc-Andre Fleury back in the net for them. He's played the last 2 games, and he most recently defeated his former team, the Pittsburgh Penguins, which he got a really good standing ovation for in Pittsburgh for that game. What are your thoughts on the Golden Knights finally getting healthy back in net, especially with Marc-Andre Fleury?
The Golden Knights have had one of the most memorable seasons that I can ever remember, because I don't think I can ever remember, at least in my lifetime, a team that was basically on their fifth string goaltender at one point, and just everybody in front of them, everybody, all the goaltenders ahead of them, basically all got hurt at once. So I've never seen anything like it before, but it's good for the Vegas Golden Knights that Fleury's back for them. I watched the game a little bit the other night between them and Pittsburgh. I mean, the atmosphere was absolutely electric. Granted, there were probably a lot of Penguin fans. There were a few thousand Penguin fans in attendance, but the game was electric. Obviously, Fleury getting the win over them, it's a huge deal. Fleury is definitely a vocal leader for that room, and he has a lot of respect among his peers. It was a big win for them, though, and they're a fun team to watch this year. I'll put it to you like that, Michael. They might have one of the best legitimate home ice advantages in the league right now.
Yeah, and one of the great things about what Vegas is that us Washington Capitals fans will be seeing the Capitals play the Vegas Golden Knights next Saturday in Vegas. So we'll actually outside of people like us who have actually watched the team and paid attention to what Vegas is doing right now, like we do with the other teams around the league, this will be a real first look for Washington Capitals fans to see this new Vegas team, especially, Nate Schmidt, and see how he's been getting used in Las Vegas. So, and then also one more note when it comes down to things. Chris Neil of the Ottawa Senators officially announced his retirement after playing 15 years, all seasons, all with the Ottawa Senators. Chris Neil obviously retiring due to injuries. What are your thoughts on Chris Neil overall as a player, and the career that he's had?
Well, Chris Neil definitely had to earn it the hard way. He wasn't a first round pick or even a second round pick. He was one of those guys that was found by Ottawa late in the draft, and he obviously made his name well known in Ottawa a lot of years. He was definitely one of the biggest pests and agitators you could probably see on the ice in the modern era. He definitely just was he was a physical player, one of those typical fourth line guys, grind guys. He definitely had to work his way up and definitely work his way to get into the league, but he played a lot of games over his career. It was definitely well worth it for him, and the Ottawa Senators organization did really well by finding a player late in the draft and getting him up with them for a lot of years. So Chris Neil will definitely be remembered in the Ottawa community, and definitely was one of those guys that players around him loved to play with him.
Yeah, and then we had one fine that happened this past week. Ottawa Senators forward Alexander Burrows has been fined $5,000, the maximum allowable under the collective bargaining agreement, for roughing San Jose Sharks defenseman Dylan DeMello during NHL Game 454 in San Jose on Saturday, December 9th, the National Hockey League's Department of Player Safety announced. The incident occurred at 14:51 of the third period. Burrows was assessed a major penalty and game misconduct for fighting. This obviously, when you get a fighting penalty in the last 5 minutes of a game, it's automatic rejection from the game and a fine. The first time you do it, and then the more times you do it, the penalties increase. This is the first time we've heard this in a while. We haven't heard about a fight in the last 5 minutes of a game in a long time, since the aforementioned Ottawa Senators and Philadelphia Flyers had their almost bench-clearing brawls almost a decade ago. So it's kind of funny to hear about that because of the Senators and Flyers, it's a Senator that's the first one to get this penalty in the longest time. So, yes. But, and then going into 3 stars of the week. And yes, no, calm down, computer. I know you want me to talk about, the Seattle thing, but calm down. 3 stars of this past week was Braden Shen, Jake Allen, and Brian Elliott. Braden Shen, center of the St. Louis Blues, ironically formerly of the Philadelphia Flyers, who the third star is from. Shen led the NHL with 6 goals, 1 assist, and 7 points, including at least 1 goal in all 4 of his appearances to power the Blues to a perfect week and top of the Western Conference standings. He notched his 3rd career hat trick, including the decisive goal in a 4-3 victory over the Canadiens on December 5th. He then scored the winning goal in a 3-0 triumph over the Dallas Stars on the 7th, and registered 2 points in a 6-1 victory over Detroit on December 9th. So, obviously, Braden Shen, big week for him, and then his teammate, goaltender Jake Allen, took 2nd star, who went 4-0-0 with a 1.50 goals against average and a .944 save percentage and 1 shutout to guide the Blues to their 3rd 4-game winning streak of the season, which is insane. And then, it's having like multiple of those throughout a season. And we could talk about a couple teams who have been on the opposite side of those in a moment, which actually is right now, where the 3rd star is Brian Elliott, goalie of the Philadelphia Flyers. Elliott posted a trio of victories along with a 1.67 goals against average and a .954 save percentage to help the Flyers bounce back from a 10-game skid and complete a perfect road trip through Western Canada. He made 43 saves in a 5-2 victory over Calgary, 24 stops in a 4-2 win against Edmonton, and 36 saves in a 4-1 triumph over the should I mention who this team is? I'm so sorry, George. The Vancouver Canucks. So we were just talking about St. Louis 4-game winning streak that they had. They've had multiples of those. They actually hit the 20 wins mark earlier this week. Philadelphia, they're 11-11-7 at the time of when this was posted. 10-game losing streak. I believe they're now on a 5-game winning streak now themselves. So it's like, when you look at that, they lost 10 straight, but now they're winning 5 straight. What have you seen in Philadelphia that's really helped them turn it around?
Obviously, if Brian Elliott keeps performing the way he does, that makes them more of a dangerous team. Obviously, the Flyers, though, they've been kind of looking for some balance in their lineup this year. They've kind of been relying heavily on 2 or 3 guys, depending on how you want to look at it. Obviously, they have Claude Giroux, who is one of their leaders and best point producers, and they also have Jake Voracek, who's also one of their top producers as well. After that, besides maybe Sean Couturier, it's kind of been a little murky for them this year as far as production goes. They haven't really. They're kind of a little bit top heavy right now. There's not much balance in their forward group as far as the scoring goes. So that's been probably their biggest Achilles heel this year, is just trying to find that balanced scoring through all 4 lines. Obviously, if you're more of a cup contending team, you get the scoring from all 4 of your lines, and that's key to having a deep playoff run. But good news for the Flyers now is that they've kind of rebounded a little bit, and they're, believe it or not, they're only 4 points out of the last wild card spot. So as poorly as they've played over the last month or so, they're still kind of right in it, right in the mix there, and they're not mathematically eliminated. So that's kind of the way the NHL works sometimes. Is sometimes even if you have a bad stretch of games, you can still be right in it, depending on how others around you are doing. So the Flyers are still right in it, but they still have some catching up to do.
Yeah, and then as my laptop wanted me to talk about now instead of now, is that a Seattle ownership group has been authorized to file an application for an NHL expansion team that would begin play in the 2021 season. Commissioner Gary Bettman announced on Thursday. The cost of the team would be $650 million, and Commissioner Bettman said the NHL is looking at only Seattle for possible expansion at this time. Let me scroll down. The group includes Jerry Bruckheimer, a Hollywood producer, and David Bonderman, a private equity CEO. Seattle would become the 32nd NHL team. Now, it should be noted that this doesn't mean that that Seattle has been granted an expansion team. It just says that they're willing to consider an expansion application and let them run in the next few months a season ticket drive, just like what they did with Las Vegas a few years ago. So for when you look at that, Seattle became a viable option for an NHL team this past week with an agreement between the city and Los Angeles-based Oakview Group for a privately financed $600 million renovation of Key Arena, which opened up back in 1962 and was the home of the NBA Seattle Supersonics, essentially from the 60s to the late 70s, the mid-80s to the mid-90s, and the mid-90s to late 2008, before they relocated to Oklahoma City, to where they are now since 2008-2009. Now, it should be noted that if this does happen, this will put a 9th team into the Pacific Division, but will also create a natural rival for your Vancouver Canucks. What are your thoughts on a potential team coming in 2021 in Seattle?
Well, I think it's great. If it does happen, I definitely think it not only help Vancouver, but it will help the NHL with exposure in the northwest part of the country. Obviously, a lot of fans that live in Seattle, a lot of hockey people that live in Seattle have ties to Vancouver, so that's kind of their team right now, if you want to call it that. That even though they're not really close by, they're still technically Vancouver fans because that's their closest team that they're exposed to. So obviously it would be really good for the NHL if they can tap into that market. The Sonics showed that they actually had a good fan base back when they existed, and the NHL, obviously hockey is still a big thing up there, and
yeah, because they got a junior team. They've had a history in minor league hockey, and I believe a history in the NHL before, back in definitely in Stanley Cup history.
So I feel that it would be a very good move for the NHL if they could tap into it. What I did find interesting too is that I also read another report that the NHL, while they will do the Key Arena renovations, that does not take into account that they could actually build a brand new arena somewhere else in Seattle. I did read that was also a possibility as well. So the options are there for the NHL as far as expansion to Seattle. But I think a couple things have to kind of fall into place because there are other franchises that could possibly be relocated during that time in the next couple years. So there could be still some movement going on in the NHL as far as aligning the divisions up and stuff like that. So,
well, it's interesting that you mentioned relocation because one big thing is obviously the Hurricanes had entered into a purchase agreement. Per the purchase agreement, they're not allowed to move for 7 years, which is based in any purchase agreement that involves new ownership for any team. They're not allowed to be moved for 7 years. With, I guess, one certain exception could be the Islanders because of their whole Barclays Center situation going on right now. They're trying to find a new home for them. But, there is talk about Calgary right now because Calgary does not have a new arena in the works right now. It seems like those talks have really, kind of died down massively. And with Houston, now with the new owner down there for the Houston Rockets, and Houston being the 4th biggest media market in the United States, that could potentially become a home for the Calgary Flames and would rebalance the Western Conference to 8-8 if Seattle does come into the league. So you have a lot of interesting stuff there. I still think Quebec will get a team via relocation, which we know is also something that Gary Bettman really hates. So it's just kind of one of those things of like, listen, we understand you don't like relocation, but you have a market that is dying. They are willing to come down and just literally pick up the franchise as a team and just carry them over to their place in Quebec. You have a place that's dying for it. Quit denying them so much. And but it's going to happen. In all honesty, I think it's the Panthers.
I'll say this: the Panthers can get by just because of the size of the Miami market / South Florida market. I would not be surprised, though, if Arizona was that team that actually relocated, for the simple fact that they're kind of in a situation where they have to build a new arena. They have to their arena situation right now is not good.
It's probably worse than Barclays.
Yeah, it's not good. Their arena is kind of nowhere near any of where most of their season ticket holders live at. So the Coyotes made a big mistake kind of putting their arena in Glendale when they should have put their arena more in downtown Phoenix probably. So they're in a tough spot right now. If Arizona does not get a new arena deal done and is able to, secure a new home, I really think that Arizona could actually be that team that could be purchased and then maybe ultimately move to Houston.
That's actually a very different take, which I like. I mean, but also one thing that can be argued, and is one of the arguments that I hear the most is that, well, if you don't have a team in Arizona, you hurt the NBC contract. Because it's like, oh, you have a team in Houston, you have a team in Phoenix or Glendale, you have two teams in Florida, you have two teams or three teams in California, you have a team in Raleigh, North Carolina, which isn't drawing flies, just like the Florida Panthers are, but just the fact that they have those teams there, it helps them with the negotiations for the TV contract, that national television contract. It's like, because this is how we have it, But when you say, oh, well, we have a team in Quebec or we have a team in Calgary, when it comes to the national contract here in the United States, they're going to go, where? Even though that's probably where some of the best rivalries come out of, is out of Canada. So, Dixon's commenting. Dixon commented saying the problem is the Coyotes had, he said that in all capital letters, an arena in downtown. It was shared with the Phoenix Suns. Yeah. And how did that work? And that was Dixon with the No kidding, Dixon. We know it was you. I'm not typing right now. The tablet is right here. It's right there. Thank you, Dixon. See, this is why, we love Dixon so much. But yeah, so it's like that NBC contract. But also, here's another point that could also potentially derail expansion or any relocation at the same time. The key date on this is 2020-21 season. The 2020-21 season. Which, at that time, we could be talking right now about a lockout.
And that's the last thing the NHL needs, is another lockout.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. Because I believe at the end of the 2018-19 season, which I believe is in a year and a half, the owners are allowed to decide to reopen the CBA. And I believe at the end of the 1920 season, the players are allowed to option to reopen the CBA. So if the owners decide not to, but the players do, and you're looking at potentially bringing a team in the 2021 season, do you see where the problem lies now?
Yes.
So you have like these other issues that have to be worked out at the same time. TV contract, I believe, is going to be up around that same time as the CBA will be. So it's like, you're talking relocation, you're talking potential expansion, but then you also got to put in the fact that, hey, there's a TV contract that needs to be negotiated, and there's a CBA that needs to be negotiated. And
hopefully the NHL decides to go back to ESPN, might I add.
Oh, you mean the network that decided to screw them over in the last 3 years of their contract?
Yes, they need to. The hockey needs to go back to ESPN coverage.
Are you hoping for Gary Thorne and Bill Clement back together?
Yes. Get the band back together. The ESPN's hockey coverage was awesome. it wasn't even Gary Thorne and Bill Clement. It wasn't even close. I mean, no offense to Doc Emmerich and Eddie Olczyk, they're both good, but Gary Thorne and Bill Clement were legends back in the day. Hockey was great on ESPN, and it needs to come back at some point.
Even though ESPN screwed them over in the last 3 years of their contract.
I think ESPN this time around might be more receptive to it because hockey does draw huge ratings all over. I really think ESPN would be stupid this time around if they were not receptive to it, and it needs to get done. The NBC coverage to me limits hockey and what it could be, and I think bringing it back to ESPN would take the coverage back to the next level. Right,
and to be honest, ESPN, the other problem I have with them right now is they pretty much let go of all their hockey writers and guys except for John Butchergross. So, and that tells you how much they really value hockey at the same time.
Yeah.
So, but I see what you're saying. I agree on some points.
I feel ESPN also has better platforms. Obviously, they have their apps and they have, to me, ESPN is more of a multimedia giant in the sporting world.
Well, that's also because they're owned by Disney.
Yes. And I just feel that, it would be, you connect more with sports fans if you watch programming on ESPN versus NBC Sports. You still kind of have that news, that corporate news feel to it. I don't know. NBC's hockey coverage to me is not great. It's not too great. And then having to listen to Pierre Maguire most of the time for games on top of that. Obviously, a lot of fans are not...
There's a lot of crying going on in the background right now.
Yeah. No offense to Pierre Maguire, he seems like a great guy, but a lot of hockey people aren't fans of his analysis in between the glass.
Shut up, Pierre. Most of his stuff is irrelevant to a lot of things anyways. So, I remember in the very beginning when they made Emmerich the head play-by-play guy. He doesn't do it anymore, but he would always try to find a way in any game, even if it didn't involve the New Jersey Devils, because that's the team he came from, would be to find a way to weave the New Jersey Devils and Martin Brodeur into any game multiple times.
Yes.
He doesn't do it anymore, but that's what he would do. And it would irritate everybody. It's like, what does that have to do with anything? What does Martin Brodeur and the New Jersey Devils have to do with this game between St. Louis and Detroit? Nothing. But, we're going to forego the third commercial break because the second commercial break because we are running on time, but I do want to do, hey George, you know what's coming up?
Yes, what's that?
Holidays.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Busy time of year.
Yeah, that thing where everyone gets presents. Thanks, Mom, as I hold up Super Sentai. No, really, my mom actually got me the 3 most recent Super Sentais that Power Rangers is based off of, so I can catch up on it before the next one comes out next month.
Yes.
Nerd. But the holidays are coming up. Actually, the holidays are now. Go get your hockey card and statue needs from our good friend Donald from Just Hockey Cards. He does team sets. He does statues like the Braden Holtby statue as a Washington Capitol. He also has like Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, Patrick Waugh, Gordie Howe, Wayne Gretzky. He does the pot vinyls. Today, he's at the Laurel Ice Rink in Laurel, Maryland. He also does mail orders and can meet people in the Silver Spring, Maryland area. For more information on how you can get your gift needs for your hockey fan, go to you can email him at Blake4, the number 4, AV at AOL.com. That's Blake, the number 4, AV at AOL.com, and tell him TXHT sent you. I get all my hockey card needs from Donald. How about you, George? You want to start getting hockey cards from Donald?
Oh, that sounds good. I'm gonna have to investigate that. Yes.
Moving on real quick, I want to do a little bit of NWHL real fast. This past weekend, the Metropolitan Riveters rallied in the third period to stay undefeated in defeating the Buffalo Buttes 4-2. They were down 2-0, and then they're trailing 2-1 going into the third period, but then would score 3 goals in a span of 3 minutes and 55 seconds, and didn't allow their opponents a single shot on goal until the final 3 minutes of the game, as they completed the 4-2 win to go 6-0 this season. And then the Boston Pride defeated the Connecticut Whale to nab control of second place in the National Women's Hockey League. The Boston Pride were victorious over the Connecticut Whale in the third meeting of the two teams this season. The Pride came out strong in the first period, scoring 2 goals. Emily Field got the scoring started with after a huge stop by Brittany Ott on the other end. Anya Bottolino, our good friend of the show, fired a shot. Ott slowed but did not cleanly stop as Alyssa Gagliardi cleared the puck from the crease, finding Jillian Dempsey, who eventually connected with Field for the first Boston goal at the 6:56 mark in the first. So that tells you how exciting that was, just to get 1 goal, which is always fun in the National Women's Hockey League. And then going to the schedule real quick, if it allows me to. Yeah, don't you just love how it works? And then on the schedule this weekend, today, you have the Connecticut Whale at the Buffalo Buttes starting at 1:30 p.m. And then you have the Metropolitan Riveters at the Boston Pride at Warrior Ice Arena at 7:30 p.m. tonight. And let me just see, I believe one of these games is the Twitter Game of the Week. And another one is a teddy bear toss, and one's also a Star Wars game. And it's not giving me the information I want. Why? Oh, that's... Okay, it doesn't give me the information, but ladies and gentlemen, one of these games is in fact a Twitter Game of the Week. I believe the Metropolitan Riveters Boston Pride game is actually a Star Wars game, and the Buffalo Buttes Connecticut Whale game is the teddy bear toss, but I may have that switched. But you can go to the NWHL Twitter page, which is at NWHL, for more information, or go to nwhl.zone for more information for that. And then the player of the week for the National Women's Hockey League was Metropolitan Riveters player Kelly Nash. Kelly Nash, who is in her first year as an assistant coach at Princeton as well, has the ability, if she chooses, to suggest to her players to not just play as she says, but as she does, because on Sunday, playing in just her second game in the NWHL, Nash had a goal and an assist in the Riveters' come-from-behind 4-2 win over the Buffalo Buttes. For her efforts, Nash has been named the NWHL's Player of the Week, so from here on the Experience Hockey Talk, we would like to congratulate Kelly Nash on becoming the NWHL Player of the Week. And then, last little tidbit of news, George. Former Washington Capitals coach Ron Wilson's going back into the United States Hockey Hall of Fame. Again. You know, yes. And it's true, he is Wilson, who coached the 1996 World Cup team, which was inducted last season. That is the only U.S. team to win a best-on-best tournament, the crowning achievement of Wilson's career. Hence why he got put in. Wilson this time is going in as an individual. Wilson, ahead of his time, thinking offensively as a player, using technology as a coach. He had 200... Oh, he's going in as a player as well, because I just read that part. Good job, Michael. He also had 250 points, 78 goals, 172 assists, and 111 games at Providence College. Still the NCAA record for points by a defenseman. He won 648 games as an NHL coach, 10th in NHL history, most among Americans, and led the Washington Capitals to the 1998 Stanley Cup Finals. He also coached the United States the silver medal at the 2010 Vancouver Olympics and the bronze medal at the 2016 IIHF World Junior Championship. According to Brian Burke, the Calgary Flames president of hockey operations, this is overdue in his mind. And just to throw this out there, because I never knew this happened, but Wilson, who is 62 years old, had a stroke in December of last year and struggles with balance. It hurts that he jokes that it hurts that he can't golf anymore, but he still has a swagger, wit and sense of humor, and will travel for his induction. What are your thoughts on Ron Wilson as a coach, especially for his time in Washington with the Capitals?
Well, Ron Wilson, obviously, the credentials are there for him. I mean, he's probably one of the best hockey minds and coaches of all time. He really changed the game. Obviously, he's a winning coach. Just kind of a funny sense of humor type of guy that he struck me as too. And but he's definitely a guy that definitely really loved the game of hockey. And I wish him all the best as he rehabilitates from his stroke and everything too. That's definitely tough. But he is he's a very memorable coach. Obviously, he is probably one of the all-time best. So he's right up there in history, and I do agree with Brian Burke. It's definitely long overdue for him.
Yeah, and I would love to see Ron Wilson go into another Hall of Fame, and that's the Hockey Hall of Fame, which is a place where he deserves to be too, for everything that he accomplished. Because we always talk about one thing that we always joke about. There's too many assistant coaches behind the bench, and back in the days it was just one coach behind the bench, and that was the head coach. And then Fred Shiro introduced one assistant coach. Well, Ron Wilson introduced the use of video on the bench to help coach his players along with his assistant coaches. So he was definitely ahead of his time, and that was something that he brought in with him. And I believe he started doing it with Washington and not Anaheim, because he came from the Anaheim Mighty Ducks first, and then he went to the Washington Capitals. And I don't think he was doing the video just yet at that time until he came to Washington. And and I love Shaggy's comment of Ron Wilson, the only coach to take the Caps to the Stanley Cup Finals, and then that whole Tikkanen thing happened. Yeah. That's going to be a story for another day. Like, we got to, because it is the 20th anniversary of the Caps going to the Stanley Cup Finals.
It's going to be another story for another century. That S.E. Tikkanen thing, that this goal will forever, unfortunately, Capitals fans will always remember it. And
we will always remember it until we finally win the Cup.
Yeah.
When the Cup is finally won, that nightmare will be forgotten.
Yes.
Just to let you know, I had cold sweats in my sleep last night because of S.E. Tikkanen.
Unfortunately, for all the wrong reasons, Capitals fans will always remember that goal or non-goal, and unfortunately, like you said, the pain will be a lot easier to deal with if they actually do win the Stanley Cup at some point one day down the road. But
yeah,
man, it's definitely. I'm sure it's very frustrating for Capitals fans.
Yep. And then real quick, George, we are near the end of our time. Huge thank you to you for coming on. We'll definitely be getting you back on sooner rather than later, like we were with WBGR, where it was like once a month. But real quick, where can the people find you in the world of the internet before net neutrality happens to us?
You can find me. My Twitter account is @CanucksFan56, and then you can also check out Nova Caps at our website, NovaCaps.com. Find us at our Facebook page @NovaCaps. You find us on our Twitter @Nova_Caps, and also on Instagram @Nova_Caps. So we're all over the web. Check us out. We provide all the latest Capitals news and content. It's really good stuff. So that's where you can find all of us at.
All right, and then of course for us on TXHT, you can find all of our information at patreon.com/TXHT_hockey, our Facebook page, facebook.com/TXHT hockey, which you're watching us on anyways right now, so just give us a like right now. And then on Twitter, you can follow us at TXHT_hockey. Please, ladies and gentlemen, note that for Patreon, we did have a Patreon exclusive scheduled for this past week. Due to scheduling conflicts, it has been pushed to next week, which will be author Ted Starkey, our good friend. We'll probably be doing more Caps and NHL history talk on that one. And then also, ladies and gentlemen, as it was announced earlier this week, we are moving to Twitch on January 6th. We will still be doing the Facebook Live, but we will be doing more with Twitch starting on January 6th. For that, you can actually already start following us by going to twitch.tv/txht_hockey. And also, we will be announcing how you can call into the show in the near future. We have created a Skype that will be used for call-ins for everyone who wants to call in and comment on the show. And then, yeah, I think that's it. Yay! And again, once again, George, thank you so much for coming on.
Michael, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you for having me back.
All right, and ladies and gentlemen, until next week, we will see you on the ice.